Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, the home of love, passion, and deep emotions. Every time you press play, every time you leave a comment, you remind me that this family is built on love. You are my heart, and I appreciate you deeply. Before we begin, let's take a moment to embrace love, hope, and endless blessings together. A prayer of love and protection for my beautiful family, Heavenly Father. Today, I lift up this beautiful family that you have brought together from all corners of the world. We may be separated by distance, but in love, we are one. Lord, pour your blessings upon them. Let every heart that listens to my voice be filled with joy, peace, and overwhelming love. For those who feel lost, be their guiding light. For those facing storms, be their shelter. For those longing for love, remind them that they are deeply cherished. Wipe away every tear, replace every worry with faith, and turn every pain into power. May happiness overflow in their homes, may success follow their steps, and may love wrap around them like a warm embrace. This family is blessed, this family is unstoppable, and no darkness shall take away our light. With gratitude and love we say Amen. My beautiful family, do you feel my love? Every story I tell, every emotion I pour into my words is for you. Do you feel it? Does my storytelling touch your heart? Tell me in the comments, because your love and feedback fuel my passion to bring you more. Let's take attendance, the Mr. Peter Stories way. My beautiful family, drop your country in the comments. Let's celebrate our love, unity, and the Black excellence that has inspired generations. Here are beloved Black legends of the 1980s. Who do you recognize? United States, Michael Jackson, the king of pop, a voice that still moves souls. Ghana, Kojo Antwi, the heartbeat of Ghanaian high life South Africa. Miriam Makeba, Mama Africa, the voice of freedom Nigeria. Fela Kuti, the fearless Afrobeat pioneer Jamaica. Bob Marley, One Love, One Heart, forever a legend. Haiti, Tabu Combo, the sound of Haiti's strength and joy. Trinidad and Tobago, Mighty Sparrow, the king of Calypso, a master of storytelling Ethiopia. Mahmoud Ahmed, a timeless voice of Ethiopian soul Brazil. Gilberto Gil, musician, poet, and fighter for freedom Cuba. Celia Cruz, the queen of salsa, still making us dance Senegal. Youssou N'Dour, a golden voice that echoes through time Cameroon. Manu Dibango, the legend of African jazz. Where are you watching from? Drop your country below, and let's fill this space with love. Now, let's dive into today's story, with passion, with heart, and with the deepest love for you, my beautiful family. The Celestial Grand Hotel stood as the crown jewel of downtown, its gleaming facade reflecting the morning sun as Sofia Martinez hurried through the employee entrance. At 20, with determined brown eyes and a practical ponytail, she was 3 months into her waitressing position at the five-star establishment. "You're cutting it close, Sophia," remarked Irina, the hostess, checking her watch. "Sorry. The bus was late, and I was up until 2 finishing my business strategy paper." Sophia quickly tied her apron, mentally calculating the hours until she could return to her textbooks. The morning proceeded normally. Wealthy guests ordering elaborate breakfasts, business meetings over coffee, tourists marveling at the ornate ceiling. By noon, the restaurant was at capacity, and Sophia balanced 3 elaborate entrees on her serving tray, navigating between tables with practiced precision. She didn't notice the man who entered through the kitchen doors, an unusual route for guests, until it was too late. The collision sent the tray flying, sauces splattering across his charcoal suit that she instantly recognized as bespoke. "I'm so sorry." Sophia dropped to her knees, frantically gathering silverware while mentally tallying the cost of the meals against her meager savings. Rather than the expected outburst, she heard a rich laugh. Looking up, she met the gaze of the most striking man she'd ever seen. Early 30s, with intense gray eyes and an unexpected smile softening his otherwise commanding presence. "Entirely my fault," he said, kneeling to help despite his ruined suit. "I shouldn't have been in the staff area." "But sir, your suit, it's ruined." Her voice faltered as she noticed other staff members watching with unusual intensity. "A small price for disrupting your workflow." He handed her a fork with surprising humility. "Though I admit I didn't expect such an impactful introduction to the staff." Sophia felt her face flush as Manager Phillips rushed over, his expression horrified. "Mr. Sir, please accept our deepest apologies. This is inexcusable." "Actually, I insist it was my error," the stranger interjected smoothly. "I hope the young lady won't be penalized for my misstep." As Phillips stammered reassurances, Sophia studied the stranger. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, though she was certain they'd never met. What was most peculiar was the way he watched her, not with anger or indulgence, but with genuine curiosity. "You're a student?" he asked unexpectedly, noticing the business theory book peeking from her bag beneath the server station. "Yes, business administration. My shift ends at 4 if you'd like to bill me for the dry cleaning." She spoke with quiet dignity, determined to take responsibility. He considered her for a moment longer than necessary. "I have a feeling our paths will cross again, Miss Sophia. Sophia Martinez. A pleasure, despite the circumstances." With a final enigmatic smile, he departed through the proper exit, leaving Sophia to face Phillips's lecture about awareness and the hotel's prestigious clientele. What she couldn't know was that Ashwell Prince, the notoriously private billionaire who had recently acquired the Celestial Grand, stood outside collecting himself. For the first time in years, his carefully constructed world had been disrupted by a waitress with intelligent eyes and unwavering integrity, something he hadn't realized he'd been searching for until that very moment. Chapter 2. Hidden Identity. 3 days after the collision incident, Sophia was coordinating with the kitchen on a special dietary request when Elena, the hostess, approached with unusual deference. "That gentleman from Monday requested your section specifically," she whispered, nodding toward a newly seated guest in a charcoal suit. Manager Phillips practically sprinted to accommodate him. Sophia recognized him immediately, not from his appearance, but from the way he observed the restaurant operations, with subtle assessment rather than entitled impatience. Unlike typical wealthy patrons, he acknowledged the busboy with the same respect shown to the sommelier. She approached with professional poise. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome back to the Celestial." "Thank you, Sophia," he replied, her name spoken without checking her name tag. "I was hoping you'd be working today." "You remembered my name," she noted, maintaining her professional demeanor despite her surprise. "I make a point of remembering people who demonstrate exceptional composure under pressure," he replied, his observation specific to her handling of the situation, rather than the generic flattery she often received from male customers. A reluctant smile curved her lips. "I appreciate your understanding about the incident. What can I get for you today?" "Just coffee black. And perhaps your recommendation for lunch." As she described the chef's specialties, Sophia noticed how intently he listened, not just to her words, but with a focus that made her feel her opinion genuinely mattered. It was disconcerting coming from someone who clearly belonged to a different world than hers. "The grilled sea bass, then," he decided. "And please call me Ash." "Certainly, Mr. Ash." He laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Just Ash. I'm a consultant reviewing some business opportunities in the area." Later, as she delivered his meal, a commotion erupted at a nearby table. A red-faced businessman was berating a newer server, Charlotte, over a minor mistake with his order. "This is unacceptable. Do you have any idea who I am? Get me your manager immediately." Charlotte, barely 19 and fighting tears, tried apologizing, but the man continued his tirade. Sophia hesitated only briefly before intervening. "Sir," she addressed the angry guest with calm authority that belied her age, "I'll take full responsibility for the confusion. If you'll allow me, I'll have the kitchen prepare your correct order immediately with priority. While you wait, perhaps you'd enjoy our house champagne with our compliments." The transformation was remarkable. The man's indignation deflated as he was offered both a solution and recognition of his perceived importance. "Well, yes, that would be acceptable." As Sophia efficiently resolved the situation, she was unaware of Ash's fascinated observation. When she returned to his table, he regarded her with newfound respect. "That was masterfully handled," he commented. "You have excellent people skills." Sophia shrugged. "Charlotte's new and still learning. The customer gets what he wants, the restaurant maintains its reputation, and a young server doesn't quit in tears. Everyone wins. You see the whole picture. That's rare." He paused. "Are you studying hospitality management?" "Business strategy, actually. I want to start my own company someday." She surprised herself with the admission. She rarely discussed her dreams with customers. Ash considered this. "What kind of company?" The unexpected question, asked with genuine interest, made her pause. "A consulting firm that helps small businesses compete with larger corporations. Most fail not because their products are inferior, but because they don't understand strategic positioning." A flash of something, appreciation perhaps, crossed his features. "Ambitious. And needed." Their conversation was interrupted by another server needing assistance. But throughout his meal, Ash observed Sophia's efficiency, her quiet authority with staff, her genuine warmth with guests. When he left, his generous tip came with a business card bearing only a phone number and the name Ash. "If you ever want to discuss business strategy," he said simply. Only after he left did Manager Phillips approach her, unusually deferential. "Was everything satisfactory with the gentleman's visit?" "I believe so. He seems nice for a consultant." Phillips gave her an odd look. "Consultant? Is that what he told you?" Something in his tone made Sophia curious. "Is he something else?" "Never mind," Phillips said cryptically. "Just make sure he receives excellent service whenever he visits." As Sophia finished her shift and rushed to evening classes, she tucked the mysterious card into her textbook, unaware that Ash had just instructed his driver to research everything about business programs at her university. Ashwell Prince, who normally delegated personal interest to his team of assistants, found himself unexpectedly clearing his schedule for the next 2 weeks to remain in the city, with regular lunch meetings planned at the Celestial Grands restaurant. Chapter 3. The Notebook Incident. 2 weeks after their first real conversation, Sophia had grown accustomed to Ash's regular appearances during her shifts. He always requested her section, always ordered something different, and always engaged her in brief but meaningful conversations about business theories or market trends whenever the restaurant's pace allowed. Today had been particularly hectic. A convention had filled the hotel, and Sophia had barely had time to breathe between tables. As her shift ended, she gathered her things, exhausted but satisfied with the generous tips that would cover next month's textbooks. "Missing something." Ash's voice startled her as she headed toward the employee exit. He held up a worn leather notebook, her prized possession, filled with business ideas, market analyses, and strategies she'd been developing since freshman year. "My notebook." Her relief was palpable as she reached for it. "I would have been devastated to lose this. Thank you." "It fell from your bag earlier," he explained, but something in his expression made her pause. "You looked through it," she realized, not as an accusation but as a statement of fact. He didn't deny it. "I opened it to find the owner. Then I couldn't stop reading." His gray eyes held genuine appreciation. "Sophia, Your analysis of market penetration strategies for small businesses is remarkable, particularly your framework for community-based competitive advantage. Most people would have been flattered, but Sophia felt unexpectedly vulnerable. Those pages contained her most private aspirations. "Those are just rough ideas," she said, reclaiming the notebook. "They're brilliant ideas," he corrected. "Your concept for a tiered consulting model that scales with client growth. I've seen Fortune 500 companies with less sophisticated approaches." She studied him, curiosity overcoming her initial discomfort. "You seem to know a lot about corporate strategy for a consultant." A smile played at his lips. "I've been around the business world a while." He hesitated, then added, "I took the liberty of making some notes in the margins. Just observations. Feel free to ignore them." Later that night, in her small studio apartment, Sophia examined his elegant handwriting in the margins of her work. Far from the patronizing corrections she'd half expected, his notes were insightful questions, relevant market examples, and occasionally simple words of encouragement. "This approach has significant potential," or "consider the application in emerging markets." One comment on her final page read, "Your instincts are exceptional. Most strategists take decades to develop this level of intuition." Sophia sat back, perplexed by the mystery that was Ash. His knowledge clearly extended far beyond that of an average business consultant. More confusing still was his apparent interest in her ideas, in her. The next day, Sophia arrived at work early, knowing Ash typically came for lunch around 1. When he appeared, precisely on schedule, she approached his table with determination. "Your notes were helpful," she said without preamble, "but I have questions." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I have time." "Your shift starts in 10 minutes, Manager Phillips reminded her as he passed. "I just need 5, she assured him before turning back to Ash. "You suggested alternative financing models for my community business initiative, but that would require relationships with regional banks that most startups can't access." "Unless," Ash countered, leaning forward with unexpected enthusiasm, "the consulting firm first establishes credibility by partnering with a larger entity. A temporary alliance that provides legitimacy before independence." For the next 20 minutes, well past when her shift should have started, they debated strategies, Sophia completely forgetting both time and the disparity in their positions. Phillips, surprisingly, didn't interrupt, instead redirecting her scheduled tables to other servers. Only when the restaurant began filling with the lunch crowd did Sophia remember herself. "I have to go. I'm so sorry for keeping you and delaying my shift." Ash smiled. "This is the most stimulating business discussion I've had in months. Perhaps we could continue it sometime when you're not working." The invitation hung between them, crossing some invisible line from professional acquaintance to something more personal. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, "but my schedule is completely full between work and studies." If he was disappointed, he hid it well. "Of course. Nevertheless, I'd be interested in seeing how your strategy framework develops." As she returned to work, Sophia felt oddly conflicted. For the first time, she'd found someone who took her ideas seriously, who challenged her thinking without dismissing it. Yet something held her back, an awareness that Ash, with his perfectly tailored suits and profound business knowledge, belonged to a world far removed from her practical, scholarship-funded reality. What she couldn't see was the way Ash watched her return to work, with growing admiration for both her brilliance and her integrity. For Ashwell Prince, accustomed to people eagerly seeking his attention and approval, her professional boundaries were both frustrating and refreshingly honorable. Chapter 4. Testing Waters. By his 8th visit to the Celestial Grand in 3 weeks, Ashwell had developed a routine that his executive assistant found both perplexing and amusing. Board meetings were rescheduled around lunch at the hotel restaurant. Conference calls mysteriously needed to happen from his hotel suite rather than his corporate headquarters across town. Most telling of all, the billionaire, known for his efficiency and focus, would linger over coffee, extending 30-minute meals into hour-long visits. Today, he watched as Sophia masterfully managed the busy lunch service, her professional demeanor occasionally brightened by genuine smiles for regular guests. When she approached his table, he noticed the shadows beneath her eyes. Midterms? He guessed as she refilled his water. Is it that obvious? She tucked a stray hair behind her ear. Advanced financial modeling and international business ethics, both on the same day. Challenging combination. He hesitated, then ventured, I have some experience in both areas. I could help you study, if you'd like. Her expression turned careful. That's kind, but unnecessarily generous with your time. I find our conversations intellectually stimulating, he countered honestly. Consider it mutually beneficial. She seemed about to refuse when Manager Phillips approached, looking flustered. Miss Martinez, we have an emergency in the kitchen. 2 servers called in sick, and the Jensen corporate luncheon just arrived with 20 additional guests. Sophia's professional mask immediately slipped into place. I'll handle sections 4 and 5 in addition to mine. I've already assigned those to Daniel. I need you to coordinate with the kitchen for expedited service. As she hurried away, Ash found himself alone with the manager, who lowered his voice confidentially. Mr. Prince, sir, I hope Ms. Martinez hasn't been bothering you with too much conversation. I can assign another server to your table if you prefer. Ash fixed the manager with a cool stare. Ms. Martinez provides excellent service. In fact, I specifically choose to sit in her section. Of course, sir, I just thought I'd appreciate if you'd continue to assign her as my server, and if you'd ensure she receives proper credit for all service to my table. His tone remained pleasant, but left no room for misinterpretation. The luncheon crisis escalated as Ash observed Sophia moving between kitchen and dining room with increasing urgency. When a junior server dropped an entire tray of appetizers, he saw her moment of decision: continue coordinating from a safe distance or dive into the chaos. Without hesitation, she knelt to help clean the mess, all while reassuring the mortified server. Something about her presence amid the restaurant chaos stirred an unexpected impulse in Ash. Before he could reconsider, he was on his feet, suit jacket removed and sleeves rolled up as he approached the kitchen doors. The kitchen was pandemonium, chefs shouting orders, servers rushing in multiple directions, the head chef bellowing about timing. Ash spotted Sophia organizing plates for the luncheon, her calm directions a counterpoint to the surrounding chaos. "What can I do?" he asked, appearing at her side. Her eyes widened. "Ash, you can't be back here." "I'm reasonably coordinated and can follow directions," he replied, already picking up a tray. Which table? Perhaps it was the absurdity of the situation, or simply her desperation. But she pointed toward the door. Corporate luncheon, table 12, shrimp appetizers for seats 1 through 10. What followed was 20 minutes of barely controlled chaos. Ashwell Prince, who hadn't served food since a university job decades ago, delivered appetizers with surprising competence. He ignored the confused stares of guests, the horrified expression of Manager Phillips, and focused instead on the small nod of approval from Sophia each time he correctly delivered an order. When the crisis finally subsided, Sophia found him in the service corridor, his once immaculate shirt bearing the evidence of his unexpected assistance. "I can't believe you did that," she said, equal parts amazed and mortified. "You're a guest, not staff." "I saw professionals handling an overwhelming situation and offered an extra pair of hands," he replied with unexpected humility. "My mother worked in food service for 20 years. I grew up watching her manage similar situations." This glimpse into his background, so different from what she'd assumed, caught Sophia off guard. You never mentioned your mother was a server. You never asked about my background, he noted without judgment. We all make assumptions based on current circumstances. The simple observation made her reconsider her own preconceptions about his character and history. The absurdity finally broke through her professional reserve, and laughter bubbled from her lips. Genuine, unrestrained laughter that transformed her face and sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. "Thank you," she said when she'd recovered. "Though I'm fairly certain Phillips is having a stroke right now." "I find I don't particularly care," Ash admitted, realizing it was true. The opinion of the manager seemed utterly insignificant compared to the sound of her laughter. "I should get back," she said, her smile lingering. "My shift ends at 3 today." He recognized the implicit invitation, the first she'd offered. "I believe you mentioned midterms. Perhaps the coffee shop across the street might be a suitable place to study." Her smile turned thoughtful. "I'd like that. I'm curious to see if your financial modeling knowledge matches your appetizer delivery skills." As she returned to work, Ashwell found himself in the unusual position of being both completely out of his element and utterly satisfied with the development. What had begun as simple fascination was evolving into something deeper, a connection he hadn't experienced before, with someone who seemed to value him for reasons entirely separate from his wealth or power. The prospect was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. Chapter 5. The Charity Gala. 3 months into their acquaintance, Sophia noticed subtle changes in their interactions. Their discussions had evolved from general business concepts to specific market analyses, with Ash increasingly soliciting her perspective on international hospitality trends. More surprising was her growing comfort in challenging his assumptions, something she'd never risk with most customers. During their last study session, he'd mentioned a development project that troubled her. The displacement of local vendors for luxury boutiques contradicts sustainable tourism principles, she'd argued, presenting alternative models that preserved cultural authenticity while enhancing profitability. Instead of defensiveness, he'd requested her detailed critique, implementing several suggestions in the revised proposal he showed her the following week. Today, she noticed a different energy as he lingered after his meal, occasionally checking his phone with uncharacteristic distraction. "Is everything all right?" she asked, professional yet genuinely concerned. He looked up, seeming momentarily uncertain, an expression she'd never observed in his typically composed demeanor. "I've been asked to represent the hospitality sector at a charitable foundation event. The focus is educational access for first-generation college students." Something in his tone made her pause. "A proposition?" "Professional," he clarified quickly. "There's a charity gala this Saturday benefiting education initiatives for underprivileged students. Many business leaders from across the country will attend. It would be an excellent networking opportunity for someone with your ambitions." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "And you're telling me this because—" "I have an invitation, plus one." His gray eyes met hers directly. "I'd like you to accompany me." The request hung between them, clearly crossing the line from professional acquaintance to something more personal. "As your date," she clarified, her tone carefully neutral. "As my guest," he corrected smoothly. "Someone who deserves the opportunity to make connections that could benefit her future. Nothing more presumptuous than that." Sophia considered his offer, weighing professional opportunity against her instinctive caution. "These people, they're in your social circle?" "Some of them," he acknowledged, "but I attend primarily for the charitable aspect and business connections." Her curiosity finally outweighed her reservation. "What would I wear to something like that?" His expression brightened. "Does that mean you'll come?" "It means I'm considering it," she replied with the frank practicality he'd come to appreciate. "But I don't exactly have gala attire in my closet." "The event provides a styling service for attendees," he said, perhaps too quickly. Part of the experience, if you're comfortable with that. 2 days later, Sophia found herself in a luxury boutique downtown, being attended by a stylist who seemed suspiciously prepared for her arrival. "Mr. Ash mentioned you're studying business," the woman said, presenting options in precisely Sophia's size. Perhaps something professional but striking. Sophia fingered the price tag on a midnight blue gown and blanched. "These are all couture pieces." "On loan for the event," the stylist assured her. "Many attendees use the service." After trying several options, Sophia selected the midnight blue gown. Elegant, with clean lines and subtle detailing that made her feel both sophisticated and authentic. When she emerged from the dressing room, the stylist's approving nod confirmed her choice. Perfect. Professional yet captivating. Exactly what a future business leader should project. Saturday evening arrived with unexpected nerves. Ash had arranged for a car to collect her, and as she approached the gala venue, the Grand Museum of Art, Sophia fought the feeling that she was stepping into a world where she didn't belong. Ash waited at the entrance, distinguished in a classic tuxedo that somehow seemed more natural on him than the business suits he wore to the restaurant. When he saw her, his composed expression momentarily faltered. "You look extraordinary," he said simply. "The dress helps," she replied, attempting lightness despite her nerves. "It's not the dress." His sincerity disarmed her usual pragmatism. Inside, the museum had been transformed into an elegant wonderland of lights, music, and art. Sophia observed the crowd, powerful men and women in expensive attire, moving with the confidence of those accustomed to wealth and influence. "Intimidating, isn't it?" Ash said quietly, noting her expression. "Remember, beneath the designer labels, they're just people making business decisions like anyone else." His understanding of her discomfort helped settle her nerves. As he guided her through the crowd, Ash surprised her by introducing her not as his guest, but as Sophia Martinez, a brilliant strategic mind, developing innovative models for community-based business development. Even more surprising was how he stepped back after introductions, allowing her to engage in conversations independently. Rather than feeling abandoned, Sophia recognized it as respect for her capabilities. During a conversation with the CEO of a regional bank about microfinancing, she glanced across the room to find Ash watching her with undisguised admiration. The intensity of his gaze sent unexpected warmth through her veins. Later, as they enjoyed champagne on a balcony overlooking the museum gardens, Sophia finally asked the question that had been nagging her all evening. "Why did you really invite me, Ash? There must be dozens of people you could have brought who are already established in your circles." He considered her question with the seriousness it deserved. "I invited you because I've rarely met anyone with your combination of intelligence, integrity, and vision. Because you deserve to be in rooms where decisions are made. And," he added with unexpected candor, "because I find I enjoy your company more than anyone else I could have asked." The admission hung between them as the orchestra began playing a waltz inside. Without speaking, he extended his hand in invitation, and she accepted, allowing him to lead her onto the dance floor. As they moved together with surprising compatibility, Sophia felt something shift between them, a deepening connection beyond professional admiration or casual friendship. "I've been meaning to tell you something," she said quietly. "I've been researching your company's community development initiatives. They're impressive, especially the education programs." His expression brightened. "Those are particularly important to me. My own education was only possible through scholarships." The personal revelation, his first, created a moment of genuine connection beyond their usual business discussions. Their eyes held as they continued dancing, the space between them feeling more comfortable than before. The moment was interrupted when a distinguished older man approached, clapping Ash on the shoulder. "There you are, Mr. Prince. The board members were wondering when you'd make your remarks about the education initiative. The name registered in Sophia's mind a moment before Ash's subtle wince confirmed it. Prince. Ashwell Prince, the billionaire entrepreneur whose recent acquisition of the Celestial Grand had been announced in business publications. The owner of the hotel where she worked. Her expression must have changed because Ash immediately touched her elbow. Richard, I'll join the board momentarily. Please excuse us. As the man departed, Ash turned to her, his expression concerned. Sophia, you're Ashwell Prince. Her voice remained steady despite her internal shock. You own the hotel. You're my employer. Technically, the hotel management company employs you, he began, then stopped himself. But yes, I should have been more forthcoming. More forthcoming. She stepped back, creating distance between them. You've been coming to the restaurant for months under false pretenses. Not false, he countered. I never lied about who I am, just omitted certain details. Certain details? The magnitude of the deception was sinking in. You watched me struggle with shifts and study sessions, all while you could have... She stopped, the implications washing over her. Wait, the styling service, the introductions tonight. Was this all some kind of experiment? The billionaire seeing how the waitress handles high society? Of course not, he said, genuine hurt crossing his features. Sophia, from the moment we met, I've respected your intelligence and drive. Yes, I should have told you who I was, but I valued being seen for myself, not my net worth. A lifetime of practical self-reliance reasserted itself as Sophia gathered her composure. I need to go. Please don't, he said quietly. Let me explain properly. I think I've heard enough, Mr. Prince. She emphasized his name with unmistakable distance. Thank you for the networking opportunity. I'm sure it will be valuable for my future career. As she walked away, dignity intact despite the turmoil inside, Sophia felt the fragile connection they'd built crumbling beneath the weight of hidden truths and unspoken realities. Her carefully constructed boundaries had protected her from precisely this scenario, becoming emotionally involved with someone from a different world, someone who could never truly understand her life or respect her independence. What she didn't see was Ash watching her departure, regret etched across his features. Ashwell Prince, accustomed to controlling every aspect of his life and business, found himself at a loss for how to repair what his caution and half-truths had damaged. Chapter 6. Truth and Distance. The week following the gala, Sophia processed her complicated feelings about Ashwell's identity. Rather than simply avoiding him, she approached Manager Phillips with professional directness. I need to discuss a potential conflict of interest, she began, explaining her concerns about the owner's particular attention to her section. I'd like to request a temporary schedule adjustment while I determine the most appropriate professional boundaries. Phillips seemed surprised by her measured approach. Mr. Prince has specifically mentioned your exceptional service standards as a model for our staff training program. He's even referenced your business insights in our management meetings. This revelation, that Ashwell had been professionally endorsing her abilities behind the scenes rather than merely pursuing personal interest, added unexpected complexity to her feelings. That's not what I expected, she admitted. He's implemented several of your suggestions about staff development, Phillips continued. The cross-training program you mentioned during that busy convention has increased both employee satisfaction and operational efficiency. Her ideas had made actual impact beyond their conversations, suggesting his interest had genuine professional respect at its foundation. Understanding dawned on the manager's face. Ah, you know. Yes, I know. She tied her apron with sharp, efficient movements, though apparently everyone but me knew from the beginning. He asked us not to mention it, Phillips admitted, said he was conducting an informal quality review of operations. The revelation that the entire staff had been complicit in the deception only strengthened her resolve to maintain distance. She threw herself into her studies with renewed determination, taking extra shifts to avoid thinking about their conversations, his genuine interest in her ideas. The almost kiss at the gala. 2 weeks after what she now mentally termed the revelation, Sophia was studying in the university library when someone silently placed a familiar, leather-bound notebook on the table beside her textbooks. "You left this at the restaurant," Ash said quietly, mindful of the library setting. "In your hurry to switch shifts." She glanced up, startled by his appearance in her academic sanctuary. Gone was the business attire. Instead, he wore simple dark jeans and a gray sweater that somehow made him look more approachable and simultaneously more handsome. "Thank you," she said stiffly, taking the notebook without meeting his eyes. Instead of leaving, he sat in the chair across from her. "I owe you an explanation, Sophia." "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Prince. You're my employer, not my friend." The words tasted bitter even as she spoke them. "I was your friend before you knew I was your employer," he countered gently. "And I'd like to believe those conversations were genuine on both sides." Sophia finally looked at him directly, finding sincerity in his expression that weakened her resolve. "Why the deception?" Ashwell sighed. "When we first met, it was simply easier not to correct assumptions. Then, as I got to know you, I realized how seriously you take your independence and professional boundaries. I was—" He hesitated, uncharacteristically vulnerable, "afraid you would shut down completely if you knew. So instead, you let me believe a lie. An omission," he corrected. "Everything else was real, Sophia. My admiration for your intelligence, my respect for your work ethic, my enjoyment of our conversations, all real." She closed her textbook, giving him her full attention. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it was? Finding out at a public event that the person I'd been increasingly trusting was actually playing some kind of role the entire time." His expression reflected genuine regret. "It was never a role. If anything, I'm more myself with you than with almost anyone else." The quiet confession hung between them. "I have finals coming up," she said finally, "and a scholarship GPA to maintain. I need to focus on my priorities." He nodded, accepting the gentle rejection. "I understand." He stood to leave, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, I'd like to make it right. Whatever that looks like for you." Something in his humility softened her anger. "I don't know what that looks like either, Ashwell." "Please continue calling me Ash," he said. "It's what my friends call me." As he turned to leave, Sophia surprised herself. "My financial systems final is on Thursday. I could use a study partner who understands global market perspectives." The invitation, cautious though it was, brought a hopeful expression to his face. "Same cafe as before? Tomorrow at 6? 5:30, she corrected. "I have an evening shift." The study session the following evening maintained professional distance, but gradually thawed the ice between them. Ashwell brought practical insights into financial systems that textbooks couldn't provide, while Sophia's theoretical questions challenged his real-world assumptions. By her third final exam, they had established a new rhythm, studying together twice weekly, maintaining professional distance during her shifts, and slowly rebuilding trust through honest conversation. When she aced her financial systems exam, scoring highest in the class, Ashwell presented her with a vintage economics text he'd mentioned during their studies. "It's not new or expensive," he clarified as she unwrapped it. "Just something that helped me during my own studies, with my notes in the margins. Thought it might interest you." The thoughtfulness of the gift, personal but not extravagant, touched her more than any luxury item could have. As the semester ended and summer approached, Sophia found herself looking forward to their study sessions despite her continued wariness. One evening, as they reviewed her successful business proposal for a competition she'd entered independently, Ashwell broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. "The hotel is hosting a staff appreciation event next month," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "I've been implementing that employee development framework you mentioned during our first conversation. The results have been remarkable." Inside the folder, Sophia found statistics showing improved retention, advancement metrics, and testimonials from staff who'd completed the new training programs. Ideas she'd casually mentioned months ago now brought to life. "You actually implemented those suggestions?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "I was just a waitress thinking out loud." "You actually implemented those suggestions?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "I was just a waitress thinking out loud." "You were a business strategist who happened to be working as a waitress," he corrected. "The perspective made your insights more valuable, not less." The recognition of her professional contributions, separate from their personal relationship, resonated deeply. "I'd value your assessment of the program's next phase," he added, "strictly as a business consultant. I've budgeted appropriately for your expertise." His deliberate acknowledgement of her professional value touched her more than any personal compliment. "I'd like to see the outcomes firsthand," she found herself saying. As summer began and her class schedule eased, Sophia found herself gradually lowering her guard. While maintaining professional boundaries during work hours, she allowed their conversations to move beyond academics to personal histories, ambitions, and philosophies. She learned of his middle-class upbringing, his scholarships, and the technology startup that had launched his fortune. He discovered her family's immigration story, her mother's struggles, and her determination to create opportunities for others facing similar challenges. The more they talked, the more the superficial differences between them, wealth, position, background, seemed less significant than their shared values, complementary perspectives, and mutual respect. By the time the staff appreciation party approached, 6 months after their first meeting, Sophia found herself at a crossroads. The wariness remained, but alongside it grew something deeper and more compelling, a connection she'd never experienced before, with someone who saw her capabilities and ambitions more clearly than anyone ever had. As she selected an outfit for the appreciation event, Sophia acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding. Despite every rational objection, every caution about their different worlds, she had developed feelings for Ashwell Prince that went far beyond professional respect or casual friendship. The realization both terrified and exhilarated her. After months of careful distance, she was finally ready to explore what might exist between them, if he still wanted to discover it too. Chapter 7. The staff celebration, the grand ballroom of the Celestial Hotel, had been transformed for the Staff Appreciation Gala. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over elegant table settings, a stage featured a jazz quartet, and the hotel's finest wines flowed freely. It was, Sophia realized, the management's genuine attempt to make every employee feel valued. She arrived in a simple emerald dress, professional but festive, and was immediately struck by the atmosphere of celebration. Housekeepers chatted with executives, kitchen staff relaxed with front desk managers, all hierarchies temporarily suspended in common enjoyment. "You look lovely," Irina, the hostess, commented, "and you picked the perfect night to let loose a little. Rumor has it the owner himself will make an appearance." Sophia smiled noncommittally. After her finals had ended, she'd seen less of Ash, though their twice-weekly coffee meetings continued. She'd maintained a careful balance, friendly but guarded, while sorting through her complicated feelings. As she accepted a glass of champagne, her eyes scanned the room, instinctively seeking him. Though they hadn't explicitly discussed whether he would attend, she felt certain he would make an appearance. Looking for someone? Manager Phillips appeared beside her, uncharacteristically relaxed in a smart blazer rather than his usual formal suit. "Just taking in the event," she replied. "It's wonderfully done." Mr. Prince was quite specific about the arrangements, Philip said with meaningful emphasis. Wanted every detail perfect. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed slightly and the jazz music faded. Phillips excused himself hurriedly, moving toward the stage where a podium had been set up. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our first annual Staff Appreciation Gala. Tonight is about celebrating the incredible team that makes the Celestial Grand the jewel of our city." Applause filled the room as he continued with acknowledgments of different departments. Sophia found herself genuinely touched by the recognition of her restaurant colleagues' efforts. "And now," Phillips concluded, "it is my distinct honor to introduce the visionary behind the hotel's recent renaissance, a man committed to excellence in hospitality and the welfare of his employees, Mr. Ashwell Prince." The room erupted in applause as Ash appeared, immaculate in a tailored tuxedo. Sophia watched as he took the stage with easy confidence, his presence commanding yet humble as he thanked Phillips. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his gaze scanning the crowd before pausing briefly on her. "When I acquired the Celestial Grand 6 months ago, I discovered its greatest asset wasn't the landmark building or prestigious reputation, but the extraordinary people who bring it to life every day." His speech continued with specific praise for different departments, personal anecdotes about exceptional service he'd witnessed, and commitments to employee development programs. Sophia found herself moved by his genuine appreciation for the staff, his understanding of their challenges, and his vision for their advancement. As the formal program concluded and the celebration resumed, Sophia mingled with colleagues, sipping champagne and enjoying rare camaraderie outside work pressures. She was midway through a conversation with Charlotte, the once timid server now confidently managing her own section, when she felt a presence behind her. "May I interrupt?" Ash's voice sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. Charlotte's eyes widened as she recognized him. "Of course, Mr. Prince. I was just telling Sophia how much I've learned from her mentoring." "She has that effect on people," he agreed, his eyes warm as they met Sophia's. "Would you mind if I borrowed her for a moment?" As Charlotte retreated, Sophia found herself alone with Ash for the first time in weeks. Up close, she noticed subtle signs of fatigue beneath his composed exterior. "Your speech was thoughtful," she offered. The staff genuinely appreciated the recognition. "I meant every word." He paused, then added, "Though I've missed our conversations these past couple of weeks." "Finals," she explained, "then extra shifts to build my summer savings." He nodded, accepting her explanation without pressing. "Would you walk with me? There's something I'd like to show you." Curiosity overcame her lingering caution, and she followed him through a discreet door leading to a private terrace overlooking the city lights. A small table had been arranged with coffee and desserts, an echo of their study sessions. "I thought you might prefer something quieter," he explained. "Large parties can be draining." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering her preference for meaningful conversation over social events, touched her deeply. "How well you know me," she said softly. "I've been paying attention." He gestured to the seats, and they settled into comfortable chairs facing the glittering cityscape. As they shared coffee and conversation, the careful distance Sophia had maintained began dissolving in the face of their natural connection. They discussed her summer plans, his recent business developments, and eventually circled back to their first meeting. "I still maintain it was entirely my fault," he insisted, smiling at the memory of their collision. "Though I can't bring myself to regret it." Even with the ruined suit, she teased, the champagne having loosened her usual reserve. "A small price for meeting you." His sincerity cut through their light banter, creating a moment of honest vulnerability. A comfortable silence settled between them as they gazed at the city below. the night's soft darkness creating an intimate bubble around their private terrace. "I've missed this," she admitted finally. "Our conversations." "As have I." He turned to face her fully. "Sophia, these past months getting to know you have been transformative for me, even with my regrettable lack of transparency initially." She studied him in the gentle light, seeing beyond the billionaire to the man who had patiently earned back her trust through consistent respect for her boundaries and genuine interest in her thoughts. "I think," she said carefully, "that I may have been overly rigid about maintaining distance." He remained still, allowing her to navigate the shifting terrain between them. And now, instead of answering, she moved closer, closing the careful gap she'd maintained for months. Her hand gently touched his, a simple gesture laden with meaning. Their conversation flowed naturally as evening deepened, sharing hopes and professional dreams with growing openness. When Ashwell finally mentioned his childhood scholarship, Sophia realized how her assumptions about his privileged upbringing had colored her perception. "I misjudged aspects of your background," she admitted. "I've been so focused on our differences that I missed our similarities." "Perhaps that's what partnerships require, seeing beyond surface contrasts to shared values," he suggested, his expression thoughtful rather than presumptuous. As midnight approached, their dialogue had created a foundation of mutual understanding, stronger than physical attraction alone. When they finally parted with a simple embrace, both recognized that something significant had shifted between them. Not rushed passion, but a deliberate step toward genuine connection built on respect and shared understanding. What had begun as physical attraction deepened into something profound as they shared not just their bodies but their vulnerabilities, dreams, and unspoken longings. In the sanctuary of darkness, the differences in their positions seemed to dissolve, leaving only two people discovering each other with wonder and increasing tenderness. As dawn approached, wrapped in the comfort of his embrace, Sophia experienced a rare moment of perfect contentment, a feeling that despite every rational objection, she had found something authentic and precious in the most unexpected place. What she couldn't know was that Ashwell, watching her peaceful sleep as morning light filtered through the windows, was already planning how to announce to the world that he had found his partner in every sense: intellectual, emotional, and now physical. The morning would bring his public declaration that the Celestial's owner had found something far more valuable than business success in the remarkable woman who had quite literally crashed into his life 6 months ago. Chapter 8. The Revelation. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting awareness that she wasn't in her modest apartment. Memories of the previous night flooded back: the gala, the terrace conversation, and everything that followed with Ashwell. The space beside her was empty, but a handwritten note rested on the pillow. "Had to handle some arrangements. Breakfast waiting in the dining room when you're ready. Last night meant everything. A." The intimacy of the message brought both a smile and a flutter of uncertainty. Their relationship had fundamentally changed, crossing boundaries she'd maintained for months. As she showered and dressed in her gala outfit from the previous evening, Sophia attempted to process the implications. In the suite's elegant dining area, she found a breakfast spread awaiting her: fresh fruit, pastries, and coffee prepared exactly as she preferred it. The thoughtfulness was characteristic of Ash, but in the clear light of morning, questions began surfacing that passion had silenced the night before. What happened now? She was still a waitress. He was still the hotel's owner. The power imbalance remained regardless of their personal connection. Her phone buzzed with a message from Phillips. All staff requested in the grand ballroom at 11 a.m. for an important announcement from Mr. Prince. Glancing at the clock, 10:30, Sophia felt a prickle of unease. An announcement today, after last night. The timing seemed significant. When she entered the ballroom at precisely 11, she found the entire hotel staff assembled, from executives to housekeepers. The room buzzed with speculation about the unexpected meeting. "Do you know what this is about?" Irina whispered when Sophia joined her. "You look nice, by the way. Same dress as last night?" Her eyebrow raised suggestively. Before Sophia could respond, Manager Phillips appeared on stage, calling for attention. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. Mr. Prince has an important announcement regarding the future of the Celestial Grand." Ashwell took the stage with the confident presence Sophia had come to recognize, though today he seemed particularly energized. His eyes scanned the crowd, seemingly searching for someone. "Good morning, everyone. First, I want to thank you all again for your exceptional work, which was celebrated last night." He paused, smiling. "Today, I have two announcements. The first concerns the hotel's future. After careful consideration, I'm pleased to share that the Celestial Grand will become the flagship property in a new hospitality group focused on employee development and community integration." Applause rippled through the crowd as he outlined plans for staff advancement programs, educational partnerships, and expansion opportunities. Sophia recognized elements from their discussions about community business models, ideas she'd shared with him during their study sessions. "My second announcement," he continued, his expression softening, "is more personal. Last night's celebration was meaningful for many reasons, but particularly because it marked 6 months since I first visited the Celestial as its new owner." A murmur passed through the crowd as staff members calculated the timeline. "Some of you may recall my first day here included an unexpected collision with a staff member that left me wearing most of a lunch entree." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. "That accident proved fortuitous, as it introduced me to someone who has since become essential to both my personal and professional vision for the future." Sophia froze as understanding dawned. He was publicly connecting last night with their relationship. "I'd like to invite that person to join me now," Ash continued, scanning the crowd with increasing intensity. "Someone whose intelligence, integrity, and compassion have transformed my perspective on both business and life." The staff looked around curiously, uncertain who he meant. Sophia felt bodies shifting, creating space around her as realization spread that she was the subject of his speech. Irina's eyes widened as she made the connection. "Sophia," she whispered, "he means you." Heat rose in Sophia's cheeks as dozens of eyes turned toward her. In that moment of public exposure, the full implications of their relationship crystallized with painful clarity. No matter his intentions, this announcement would rewrite her professional identity. She would no longer be Sophia Martinez, dedicated waitress and business student, but Sophia Martinez, the owner's lover. Everything she'd worked for, respect from colleagues, recognition for her competence rather than her connections, would be undermined. Her independence, the cornerstone of her identity, suddenly seemed threatened by well-intentioned but overwhelming public acknowledgement. As Ashwell continued searching the crowd, Sophia made a decision. With quiet determination, she backed toward the rear exit, slipping out before he could locate her. In the service corridor, she moved quickly, gathering her few personal items from her locker. With shaking hands, she scribbled a brief resignation letter, leaving it on Phillips's desk before exiting through the employee entrance. Outside, the bright morning sun contrasted sharply with her inner turmoil. She flagged a taxi, directing it to her apartment, her mind racing with decisions that needed immediate action. Back in the ballroom, Ashwell's announcement concluded with confusion when the intended subject couldn't be located. As staff dispersed, Manager Phillips approached cautiously. "Sir, Miss Martinez appears to have left the premises." He hesitated before extending an envelope. "She left this resignation letter." Ashwell's expression shifted from confusion to concern as he read her brief, formal language terminating her employment effective immediately. "When did she leave?" he demanded. "Just minutes ago, sir, during your announcement." Understanding dawned with painful clarity. His public declaration, intended as a gesture of commitment, had instead highlighted precisely what Sophia had feared from the beginning, that any relationship between them would undermine the independence she valued above all else. While Ashwell organized a search, Sophia was already packing her apartment. A hastily arranged flight would take her home to St. Lucia that evening, the island sanctuary where she'd spent childhood summers with her grandmother. There, she could process what had happened and make decisions without pressure. She left minimal traces, a brief message to her university advisor requesting a semester leave, automatic payments arranged for her modest apartment until the lease expired, and notification to her scholarship committee about her temporary absence. The one connection she purposely avoided was Ashwell. His calls went unanswered, his messages unread. Not from anger, but from the painful clarity that her feelings for him had clouded her judgment about the fundamental incompatibility of their positions. She needed distance to reclaim her perspective and independence. As her plane lifted from the tarmac that evening, carrying her toward the Caribbean, Sophia allowed tears to fall freely for the first time. She mourned not just the loss of their connection, but the discovery that even the most genuine feelings couldn't bridge certain realities, that sometimes love alone wasn't enough to overcome the complexities of different worlds colliding. What she couldn't know was that Ashwell had tracked her to the airport, arriving moments too late to catch her before boarding. Standing at the terminal window, watching her flight depart, he felt a determination unlike any he'd experienced in business conquests. For the first time in his life, Ashwell Prince had found something his wealth and influence couldn't immediately secure: the trust and partnership of someone who valued integrity and independence above all material considerations. As he returned to his empty hotel suite, surrounded by reminders of their brief night together, he began formulating a different approach, one that would respect her independence while demonstrating his commitment to earning back her trust, whatever that might require. Chapter 9. The Search. 3 weeks after Sophia's abrupt departure, Ashwell sat in his office overlooking the city, a familiar leather notebook open before him. Her business ideas and strategies, annotated with his comments, represented their shared intellectual connection, perhaps the only tangible remnant of what they'd built. Still nothing? Caroline, his executive assistant, asked from the doorway. Her phone remains disconnected. The university will only confirm she's on approved leave. He closed the notebook carefully. It's as if she's vanished. Caroline had witnessed her boss's transformation over 6 months, from driven but somewhat isolated executive to a man capable of genuine connection. His determination to find Sophia wasn't mere wounded pride, but something deeper. The private investigator delivered his preliminary report, she said, placing a folder on his desk. Limited findings, but perhaps helpful. Ashwell examined the contents: Sophia's academic records showing exceptional performance, her scholarship history, employment background at 3 restaurants before the Celestial. The final page provided family information: mother deceased 5 years prior, father unknown, raised primarily by her maternal grandmother in St. Lucia until age 12. St. Lucia, he murmured, remembering passing mentions of the island in their conversations. She talked about learning to swim in clear waters, climbing tropical fruit trees. It's not much to go on, Caroline cautioned. The island has over 180,000 residents. But she mentioned her grandmother's village near Soufriere. A plan began forming. Get the jet ready. I'm going to St. Lucia. 2 days later, Ashwell landed at Huonora International Airport, the humidity of the Caribbean, a sharp contrast to the air-conditioned environments he typically inhabited. Rather than his usual business attire, he wore simple linen trousers and a light shirt, an attempt to blend in rather than announce his wealth. His driver, a local man named Joseph, regarded him curiously as they left the airport. "Business or pleasure, sir?" "Neither, actually," Ashwell replied. "I'm looking for someone." Joseph's expression brightened with island hospitality. "Ah, a search. St. Lucia is small but full of hidden treasures. Who are you seeking?" "A woman named Sophia Martinez. Her grandmother lived near Soufriere." Recognition flickered across Joseph's face. "Martinez family." "There's only one Martinez household in Soufriere that I know of, Elena Martinez's place on the hillside." The unexpected lead sent a surge of hope through Ashwell. "Could you take me there?" "Now?" Joseph seemed surprised. "It's nearly evening, sir." "I've traveled across an ocean to find her," Ashwell said simply. "A few more hours won't matter." As they drove along coastal roads, dramatic Piton Mountains rising in the distance, Ashwell absorbed the lush landscape, so different from the urban environments where he'd built his empire. He tried to imagine Sophia here as a child, climbing mango trees and swimming in turquoise waters. The road narrowed as they climbed into the hills above Soufriere, eventually stopping before a modest home with a wide veranda overlooking the Caribbean Sea. Flowers bloomed in careful gardens, and a small orchard of fruit trees stretched behind the house. "This is the Martinez place," Joseph confirmed. "Elena's been gone some years now, but the family kept the property." Ashwell approached the house with uncharacteristic uncertainty. What if Sophia refused to see him? What if she wasn't here at all? Before he could knock, an elderly man appeared from around the side, regarding him with friendly curiosity. "Can I help you, young man?" "I'm looking for Sophia Martinez," Ashwell explained. "I was told she might be staying here." The man's expression shifted subtly. "And who might be asking after her?" "My name is Ashwell Prince. We worked together in the States." Recognition dawned in the old man's eyes. "Ah, you'd be the hotel owner, then?" Ashwell's surprise must have shown because the man chuckled. "Small island, big ears, news travels." He extended a weathered hand. "I'm Thomas, caretaker of Elena's property since before Sophia was born." "Is she here?" Ashwell asked, hope rising. Thomas studied him thoughtfully. "She is. Whether she'll see you is another matter." He gestured toward a path leading through the fruit trees. "She's at the cove, down that trail, about 10 minutes' walk. I'll leave it to her whether to welcome you or send you packing." Thanking the caretaker, Ashwell followed the path as it wound through mango and papaya trees, eventually descending toward a secluded beach embraced by rocky outcroppings. As the trail opened onto white sand, he spotted a solitary figure sitting near the water's edge, gazing out at the sunset-painted sea. Even from a distance, Sophia's profile was unmistakable. She wore a simple sundress, her hair loose in the sea breeze, so different from the professional waitress or serious student he'd known, yet undeniably her. As he approached, the sound of his footsteps on sand alerted her to his presence. She turned, surprise registering before her expression closed into careful neutrality. "How did you find me?" No greeting, no warmth. With difficulty, he answered honestly, stopping several feet away to respect her space. "May I join you?" After a moment's hesitation, she nodded toward the sand beside her. As he sat, maintaining a respectful distance, the crash of waves filled the silence between them. "Why did you come?" she finally asked, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Because you left without giving me a chance to understand," he said simply. "Because what we had, what we were building, deserved better than an abrupt ending." She sighed, drawing patterns in the sand with her fingertips. "What we had was complicated by who we are. Your announcement made that unavoidably clear." "My announcement was poorly conceived," he acknowledged. "I didn't consider how it would affect your position, your relationships with colleagues." "That was thoughtless, and I apologize." Her expression softened slightly at his contrition. It wasn't just the announcement, Ash. It was the reality it highlighted. You're Ashwell Prince, billionaire hotel magnate. I'm a waitress putting myself through school. Those worlds don't naturally align. They aligned for us, he countered gently. Every conversation, every shared idea, every moment of connection was real, regardless of our external circumstances. They sat in silence as the sun continued its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Finally, Sophia turned to face him directly. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "Something that contributed to my decision to leave so abruptly." Ashwell waited, sensing the importance of whatever she was preparing to share. "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them, carried on the sea breeze. That night, after the gala, I didn't realize until I was already here when my period was late. The revelation hit Ashwell with stunning force, not unwelcome, but entirely unexpected. As the implications registered, his expression must have reflected his shock, because Sophia continued quickly. "I don't expect anything from you. I made this decision to come here, to have space to think, before I even knew. Finding out afterward only confirmed I needed time away from everything to figure out my path forward." "How a child," Ashwell said softly, testing the words. "We're having a child together." "I'm having a child," she corrected gently but firmly. "What role you play in that is yet to be determined." The statement might have offended him once, the implication that his involvement wasn't automatically welcomed. Instead, he recognized her protective instinct, her fierce independence that had first drawn him to her. "May I tell you what I hope that role might be?" he asked carefully. She nodded, her expression guarded but not hostile. "I hope to be a full partner in parenting, in whatever form you're comfortable with. I hope to support this child's growth and development not just financially, but emotionally and intellectually." He paused, gathering courage for his deepest truth. "And I hope to continue building what we started, a relationship based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine connection." Sophia studied him, searching for insincerity but finding none. "You make it sound simple." "Not simple," he corrected. "Worthwhile." The sunset had faded into dusk, the first stars appearing above them. Sophia rose, brushing sand from her dress. "I need time, Ash. This isn't a decision I can make impulsively, especially now." "I understand." He stood as well, maintaining the space between them despite his desire to close it. "How long will you stay in St. Lucia?" "Until I figure things out," she answered honestly. "The baby isn't due for 7 months. I have time to make decisions." As they walked back toward the house in comfortable silence, Ashwell considered his next steps carefully. "I've taken a room in Soufriere for a few days. With your permission, I'd like to visit again, to talk, to understand your perspective better." At the edge of the property, Sophia finally offered a small smile, the first since his arrival. "Thomas serves breakfast on the veranda at 7. You're welcome to join us tomorrow." She hesitated, then added, "I'm not making any promises, Ash, but I'm willing to talk." Watching her walk toward the house, silhouetted against warm light spilling from windows, Ashwell felt something he rarely experienced in business negotiations, the patience to let circumstances unfold at their own pace. Some things couldn't be acquired through determination or resources. They had to be earned through consistent action and genuine respect. As he returned to his hotel that evening, Ashwell began making calls, not to announce his impending parenthood or make grand gestures, but to reorganize his life to accommodate extended time in St. Lucia. Whatever happened between him and Sophia, he was now connected to this island and its future inhabitant in ways that would reshape his priorities forever. Chapter 10. Caribbean Confrontation. For 3 days, Ashwell joined Thomas and Sophia for breakfast on the veranda, their conversations gradually evolving from cautious politeness to something approaching their former ease. They discussed island history, local culture, and occasionally ventured into lighter memories of their time at the Celestial, carefully avoiding the complexities that remained unresolved between them. On the fourth morning, Ashwell arrived to find only Thomas setting the table, his expression apologetic. "She's not feeling well today," the caretaker explained. "Morning sickness, she calls it, though it seems to strike her any time it pleases." "Can I see her?" Ashwell asked. "Perhaps bring her some tea?" Thomas shook his head. "She's asked for privacy today. Said to tell you she'll see you tomorrow instead." Accepting the boundary with disappointment but understanding, Ashwell redirected his energy. "Then perhaps you could use some help with the property maintenance I've noticed you doing." Thomas raised an eyebrow, glancing pointedly at Ashwell's clean linen shirt and designer watch. "You offering to do physical labor, Mr. Prince?" "I wasn't always a businessman," Ashwell replied with a smile. "My father was a carpenter. I worked construction summers during college." This revelation visibly surprised the caretaker. "Is that so? Well then, the East Garden Wall needs rebuilding after the last storm. Let's see what those corporate hands remember about honest work." What began as a test became a full day's partnership, with Thomas instructing and Ashwell executing the detailed stone masonry required to rebuild the traditional wall. By afternoon, both men had shed their shirts in the Caribbean heat, working in companionable rhythm. "She doesn't know, does she?" Thomas asked as they took a water break in the shade. "About your background?" Ashwell wiped sweat from his brow. "We never got that far in sharing personal histories. Might help her understand you better." Thomas studied the rebuilt wall with approval. "This isn't your first time working with your hands. Most men of wealth I've met wouldn't know which end of a trowel to hold." "My wealth came later," Ashwell admitted, "after years of work and some fortunate decisions." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "She fears becoming her mother." The non sequitur caught Ashwell off guard. "Her mother?" "Camilla, Elena's daughter, Sophia's mother." Thomas settled against a tree trunk, clearly preparing to share something significant. "Beautiful, brilliant woman who fell in love with a wealthy businessman visiting the island. He promised her the world, took her back to America, married her even. For a while it was a fairy tale." Ashwell listened intently, sensing the importance of this history. Then his business expanded, his social circle changed, and suddenly the island girl wasn't sophisticated enough for his new world. He left her for his executive assistant, younger, from his social class, understood his world better. Thomas's expression hardened with old anger. Camilla came home broken, with 5-year-old Sophia in tow. Never recovered her spirit, worked herself to illness trying to provide for her daughter, rejected all help from Elena because she was determined to stand on her own. The parallels to Sophia's fierce independence suddenly made perfect sense. She's protecting herself from repeating her mother's experience. "And protecting her child," Thomas added meaningfully. "She believes wealth corrupts eventually, that power and money make promises easy to break when convenient." Ashwell absorbed this insight, understanding more clearly the deep-rooted nature of Sophia's resistance. "Thank you for telling me this, Thomas." "Didn't tell you for your sake," the caretaker said bluntly. "Told you for hers. If you're going to walk away eventually, better do it now before she lets herself hope." The challenge hung between them as they returned to work, completing the wall as afternoon faded toward evening. When they finished, Thomas surveyed their work with approval. "You build solid things, Mr. Prince. Now the question is whether they last through storms." The following morning, Sophia rejoined them for breakfast, looking tired but composed. She remarked on the rebuilt wall with genuine appreciation. Thomas says you did most of the stonework, she commented, studying Ashwell's hands now bearing calluses and small cuts from the previous day's labor. My father taught me, he explained. Before he passed away, he made sure I knew how to create things that would endure. Something in his tone prompted her closer attention. You never mentioned your father before. You never asked, he replied gently. There's much we still don't know about each other, Sophia. After breakfast, she surprised him by suggesting a walk to the village market. As they strolled down the hillside path, locals greeted Sophia warmly, many remembering her from childhood visits. In the vibrant market, filled with tropical fruits, spices, and handcrafts, she moved with comfortable familiarity while Ashwell observed this new side of her, relaxed, connected to community, speaking snippets of patois with vendors. You belong here, he observed as she negotiated for mangoes with a fruit seller who remembered her grandmother. Part of me does, she acknowledged. I have roots here, memories. But I've built a life elsewhere, too. They paused near the harbor, watching fishermen bring in their morning catch. The peaceful scene provided an opening for the conversation they'd been avoiding. Thomas told me about your mother, Ashwell said quietly. About your father. Sophia stiffened slightly, but didn't deny the relevance. Then you understand my hesitation. I understand your fear, he corrected gently. But I'm not your father, Sophia. And you're not your mother. Aren't we? She turned to face him fully. A wealthy businessman, a woman from a different world. The pattern seems disturbingly familiar. Patterns only determine outcomes if we let them, he countered. I came to the Celestial that first day with tremendous privilege and power. Yes. But I left, having encountered someone who challenged me, who saw through status to substance, who made me want to be worthy of her respect, not just her attention. The honesty in his voice held her gaze as he continued. I don't want you to abandon your dreams or independence, Sophia. I fell in love with them, with your determination, your integrity, your vision. I want to support those qualities, not diminish them. The word love hung between them, spoken for the first time. Sophia's expression softened briefly before uncertainty reclaimed it. Words are easy, Ash. My father made promises too. Then don't trust my words, he said simply. Trust actions over time. I'm restructuring my businesses to allow me to spend significant time here. I've leased property in Castories where I can establish a satellite office. I'm here for the duration, Sophia, not just for the pregnancy, but for however long it takes to demonstrate through consistent actions that my commitment is genuine. She studied him with surprise. You've done all that in 4 days. When something matters enough, decisions become simple. He reached for her hand, encouraged when she didn't pull away. I'm not asking you to trust me completely yet. I'm asking for the opportunity to earn that trust, day by day. A group of children ran past, chasing each other with laughter that momentarily distracted them both. When Sophia turned back to him, her expression had softened into cautious hope. I need to be clear about something, she said firmly. If, and it remains if, I allow you into my life, into our child's life, it will be as a partner, not a provider. I won't be dependent on your wealth or position. I wouldn't want you to be, he replied honestly. Your independence is part of who you are, part of what I respect about you. She considered his words, then made a decision. Come for dinner tonight. Not just breakfast, 7 o'clock. There are things we should discuss properly if we're considering any kind of future. That evening, they sat on the veranda long after dinner was cleared, the sounds of night insects and distant waves providing backdrop to their most honest conversation yet. They discussed practical matters, her education plans, his business obligations, how they might balance 2 different worlds while raising a child. I won't abandon my degree, she stated firmly. I've worked too hard to get where I am. I'd never ask you to, he assured her. In fact, I'd support whatever timeline works best for your studies. As midnight approached, their conversation turned more personal. Ashwell shared his childhood in a middle-class neighborhood, his father's early death, and the technology innovation that had launched his fortune. Sophia revealed her struggles after her mother's death, her determination to overcome educational barriers, and her dreams beyond graduation. "It's late," she finally said, rising from her chair. "You should head back to your hotel." He stood, respecting the boundary despite their progress. "Thank you for tonight, Sophia, for listening, for sharing." As he prepared to leave, she surprised him by touching his arm, her expression serious. "I'm still processing everything, Ash, but I appreciate your honesty, your willingness to understand my perspective." "That's all I can ask for now," he replied, resisting the urge to pull her closer. For the next week, their daily meetings continued, sometimes with Thomas present, often just the two of them exploring the island while deepening their understanding of each other. Ashwell introduced her to his plans for establishing a Caribbean headquarters for his hospitality group, genuinely seeking her input on community integration. Then, on the 10th day of his stay, everything changed. Ashwell arrived for breakfast to find Thomas alone, his expression grave. "She's at the hospital in Castries," the caretaker said without preamble. "Started having severe pain and bleeding early this morning. I drove her myself." Ashwell felt his stomach tighten with concern. "Is she all right?" "She's stable," Thomas said, his voice measured. "The doctor is concerned about possible complications. She asked for you specifically." During the drive to Castries General Hospital, Ashwell contacted his medical connections in Miami, arranging for consultation if needed. This wasn't about wielding influence, but ensuring all medical options would be available. When he arrived, he found Sophia in an examination room, pale but composed as a doctor reviewed ultrasound images. She looked up when he entered, her expression complex, relief mingled with vulnerability she rarely showed. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "There's nowhere else I would be," he said simply, approaching her bedside but respectful of her space until she extended her hand to him. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with a professional demeanor, explained the situation. "We're monitoring some concerning symptoms that could indicate placental issues. However, both fetuses currently have strong vital signs." "Both?" Ashwell asked, momentarily confused. The doctor adjusted the ultrasound screen. "Yes, Ms. Martinez is carrying twins. She only learned this today during the emergency scan." "Twins?" Sophia whispered, her fingers tightening around Ashwell's. As the doctor pointed out two tiny flickering heartbeats on the screen, Ashwell felt something fundamental shift within him. These weren't abstract concepts now, but visible lives, his children, their children, depending on both him and Sophia. When the doctor left them alone, Sophia finally allowed her composure to crack, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I was so afraid. When the pain started, all I could think was that I might lose them before I'd even accepted them fully." Ashwell sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still holding her hand. "You don't have to do this alone, Sophia. Not the pregnancy, not parenthood, not any of it. Unless that's truly what you want." She studied him through tears, her defenses finally lowering. "When they told me to call someone, your name was the only one that came to mind. Not because of your resources or what you could provide, but because—" She hesitated, then finished honestly, "because I wanted you here, with me, through this." The simple truth of her statement, the vulnerability it represented, moved him deeply. Careful of the monitoring equipment, he gathered her in his arms, holding her as she released weeks of tension, fear, and uncertainty. "I'm here," he promised against her hair, "for all of it, as long as you'll have me." That night, he slept in the uncomfortable chair beside her hospital bed, refusing all suggestions that he return to his hotel. When morning came and the doctor confirmed the bleeding had stopped, the crisis passing as quickly as it had arrived, Sophia made a decision that would alter both their paths. "Come back to the house with me," she said simply. "Not just for breakfast or dinner, but to stay. Thomas can bring your things from the hotel." It wasn't a declaration of love or a promise of forever, but it was an opening. Permission to share her space, her daily life, and the journey of their unexpected pregnancy. For Ashwell, it represented more progress than any business victory had ever provided. As they left the hospital together, her fingers interlaced with his, he understood that the careful wall she'd built around her heart hadn't fallen completely. But a gate had definitively opened, one he intended to walk through with patience, consistency, and unwavering commitment to proving that some patterns could indeed be broken. Chapter 11. Breaking Barriers. The weeks following Sophia's hospital stay brought significant changes to the hillside home. Ashwell's transition to island operations proved more challenging than anticipated. Reliable internet connectivity faltered during tropical storms. Video conference scheduling across time zones required 4 a.m. meetings, and local business regulations necessitated partnerships with St. Lucian nationals. When his technology team proposed installing private infrastructure that would bypass local systems, Ashwell rejected the solution. "We adapt to the island, not the reverse," he insisted, instead funding improvements to the regional telecommunications network that would benefit all residents. His leadership team initially resisted the Caribbean headquarters concept. "The operational inefficiencies will impact quarterly projections," his CFO warned during a particularly tense conference call that Sophia overheard. "Then we adjust our metrics to prioritize sustainable growth over immediate returns," Ashwell responded with quiet authority. "Our business model must evolve to accommodate values beyond profit margins." With Thomas's guidance, Ashwell established a moderate presence, converting a small outbuilding into a workspace rather than constructing the elaborate office his architects had proposed. His gradual integration into island rhythms demonstrated commitment through adaptation rather than imposing mainland expectations. The pregnancy progressed with careful monitoring, the initial scare giving way to more typical concerns. Sophia's morning sickness subsided as she entered her second trimester, replaced by a healthy appetite and gradually increasing energy. One warm afternoon, Ashwell returned from his office to find Sophia on the veranda, surrounded by papers and her laptop. The regional development director he'd introduced her to last month had apparently been impressed with her insights. "Perfect timing," she said, gesturing to the chair beside her. "The St. Lucia Economic Development Council wants to implement my microfinancing framework for local artisans. They've offered me a consulting position." He joined her, noting the professional proposal she'd developed independently. "That's extraordinary, Sophia. I've incorporated feedback from the local business owners we met in Soufriere," she explained, showing him the modifications. "Their insights about seasonal challenges completely transformed my approach." Ashwell examined her work with genuine admiration. The strategy incorporated sophisticated financial modeling with practical applications he hadn't considered. This balances sustainable growth with cultural preservation beautifully. The rotating credit structure is particularly innovative. "It's been helpful to actually live here again, see the challenges firsthand." She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about my degree completion. The university offers distance learning options for the remaining requirements." "You'd finish from here?" he asked, careful to keep any presumption from his tone. "At least for now." She rested a hand unconsciously on her growing belly. "The doctor recommends minimal travel until delivery, and afterward, well, relocating newborn twins seems unnecessarily complicated." The implication that she was planning to remain in St. Lucia with him sent a wave of quiet joy through Ashwell. They had established a comfortable routine over the past months, but discussions of their long-term future had remained deliberately vague. "Whatever you decide, I support completely," he assured her, "though I admit I'm selfishly pleased at the prospect of you staying." A small smile curved her lips. "I've noticed." Their evening routine had evolved organically. Dinner prepared together, Ashwell proving surprisingly capable in the kitchen, followed by conversation on the veranda or walks along the beach when the weather permitted. Tonight, as they cleaned dishes side by side, Sophia broached a subject they'd been circling for weeks. "We should discuss names," she said casually, "for the twins." Ashwell nearly dropped the plate he was drying. Names made everything more real, more permanent. "Do you have preferences?" "I thought perhaps Elena for a girl, after my grandmother." She passed him another plate. "But we don't know genders yet, so we need options." "My father's name was James," he offered tentatively, "though I'm open to any names you prefer." She considered this. "Elena and James. Or perhaps James and—" She paused, then suggested softly, "Thomas, for the man who's been more a grandfather to me than anyone." The thoughtfulness of her suggestion, incorporating his history alongside hers, touched Ashwell deeply. Elena and James, or James and Thomas, both sound perfect. Later that evening, as they sat on the veranda watching distant lightning illuminate the horizon, Sophia asked a question that caught him off guard. "Do you miss it? Your life before? The luxury, the power, the ease of having everything at your command?" Instead of answering immediately, Ashwell considered the question honestly. "I miss certain conveniences," he admitted. "The ability to make decisions without considering logistics, having resources immediately available. But I don't miss the isolation of that life, or the relationships based on what I could provide rather than who I am. And this," she gestured to their modest surroundings, "is enough for you? A simple island life, far from corporate headquarters and business empires. This isn't about location, Sophia." He held her gaze steadily. "It's about presence, being fully engaged in what matters most. I can manage businesses from anywhere. What I can't replicate is this connection, this partnership we're building." She studied him thoughtfully. "3 months ago, I wouldn't have believed you. And now I've watched you rebuild garden walls, negotiate with local fishermen, and adapt corporate strategies for island businesses. I've seen consistency rather than just heard promises." Her expression softened with vulnerability. "It's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain my skepticism." The admission represented monumental progress. Before he could respond, she continued with unexpected candor. "I was so determined to avoid my mother's mistakes that I nearly made new ones of my own. I almost rejected something genuine out of fear." Ashwell reached for her hand, encouraged when she interlaced their fingers. "Fear is a natural response to past pain. But you're not defined by her experience, Sophia. I'm beginning to understand that." She met his gaze directly. "I'm also beginning to accept that what I feel for you isn't going to disappear through sheer determination." The acknowledgement hung between them, significant in its simplicity. Ashwell responded with matching honesty. "I fell in love with you months ago, Sophia. That hasn't changed. It's only deepened with truly knowing you." Instead of withdrawing, as she might have earlier, she moved closer, allowing him to wrap an arm around her shoulders as they watched the distant storm play across the horizon. The gesture, more intimate than physical passion, represented a barrier breaking between them, trust gradually replacing caution. One Sunday morning, several weeks later, Ashwell returned from an early swim to find Thomas and Sophia in serious conversation that ceased abruptly when he appeared. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noting their expressions. "Show him," Thomas encouraged, nodding toward a document on the table. Sophia hesitated, then extended several papers. "It's the deed to this property. After Elena died, it transferred to my mother and then to me after her passing." Ashwell scanned the documents, uncertain of their significance until he reached the final page, a transfer form with his name alongside Sophia's. "I don't understand," he said, looking up with confusion. "Joint ownership," she explained, her voice steady despite evident nervousness. "If we're truly building a life together, if this is becoming our family home, then it should reflect that commitment legally." The gesture's profound meaning wasn't lost on him. For Sophia, fiercely independent and protective of her autonomy, sharing ownership of her ancestral home represented enormous trust. "Are you certain?" he asked, understanding the magnitude of what she offered. "I've spent months watching you integrate into island life, respect local customs, and genuinely embrace a world very different from your own." Her expression held newfound certainty. "You've demonstrated commitment through consistent action, not just words." Ashwell set the documents carefully on the table and took her hands in his. "I'm honored beyond words, Sophia, but I don't need legal assurance to remain committed to you and our family." "I know," she said simply. "That's precisely why I'm offering it." That evening, as tropical breezes carried the scent of frangipani through open windows, their relationship crossed its final threshold. What began as gentle affection evolved naturally into passion tempered by the tenderness of deepening love. Their physical reconnection symbolized the emotional barriers finally dissolved between them, trust replacing caution, vulnerability embraced rather than feared. Later, wrapped in peaceful contentment, Sophia traced patterns on his chest with thoughtful fingers. "I was wrong about you, Ash. About us." "How so?" he asked, brushing hair from her forehead. "I believed our different worlds made connection impossible, that wealth and power would inevitably corrupt whatever existed between us." She raised herself on one elbow to meet his gaze directly. "But I've watched you adapt to this place, build relationships based on mutual respect rather than influence. You've created a life here without imposing your previous world upon it." Ashwell smiled with genuine appreciation for her insight. "Perhaps because this life holds something my previous one lacked: authentic connection, purpose beyond acquisition, the chance to build something meaningful with someone who values substance over status." As they drifted toward sleep, entangled in shared warmth, Sophia murmured words that completed the journey they had begun with that first collision 6 months earlier. "I love you, Ash." Not despite our differences, but including them. The simple declaration, offered without qualification or reservation, represented the final barrier between them dissolving, not through dramatic gestures or elaborate promises, but through patient understanding and consistent demonstration of genuine commitment. The storm that had threatened on the horizon earlier that evening finally arrived, wind and rain battering the sturdy house built generations ago. But within its protective walls, Ashwell and Sophia remained peacefully entwined, their connection having weathered its own storms to emerge stronger and more resilient than either had imagined possible. Chapter 12. New Beginnings. St. Lucia's morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, casting gentle patterns across the nursery. Ashwell and Thomas had spent weeks preparing. 2 handcrafted cribs, made from local mahogany by island artisans, stood ready beside a comfortable rocking chair. The walls, painted a soothing seafoam green, displayed framed black and white photographs of Sophia's grandmother, her mother, and now, most recently added, an ultrasound image showing 2 distinct profiles. In the master bedroom, Sophia stood before a full-length mirror, her expression a blend of wonder and disbelief as she cradled her 8-month belly. I feel like I've swallowed a small island nation, she remarked dryly as Ashwell entered with her morning tea. You look spectacular, he countered, kissing her temple as he handed her the cup, though Dr. Reynolds mentioned the twins might arrive earlier than originally calculated. 3 more weeks, according to yesterday's appointment. Sophia settled carefully into a chair, wincing slightly as one of the babies delivered a particularly energetic kick, though these two seem increasingly determined to make their own schedule. The past 6 months had transformed both their relationship and their surroundings. The hillside home had expanded thoughtfully, modern conveniences integrated while preserving its traditional character. Ashwell's Caribbean office had evolved from satellite operation to regional headquarters, employing local staff trained through a program Sophia had helped design. Most significantly, Sophia had completed her business degree requirements remotely, receiving her diploma via mail just weeks earlier. The achievement had been celebrated with a gathering of newfound island friends and colleagues who had become their extended family. "What time is your meeting?" she asked, sipping her tea as Ashwell prepared for his day. 10 o'clock with the Tourism Development Board. They're interested in your sustainable business model for local artisans. He adjusted his tie, a concession to professional standards despite the island's relaxed atmosphere. Sure you don't want to join? They specifically asked for your input. She shook her head, smiling. I've submitted my recommendations in writing. Besides, someone needs to approve the final inventory for the school opening next month. The school was Sophia's passion project, a business incubator providing training and microfinancing for local entrepreneurs. What had begun as her theoretical model had evolved into a practical reality, funded through a foundation they'd established together. Their loss, Ashwell said, bending to kiss her properly before departing. Dinner reservation still confirmed for 7? Barring any surprise labor announcements, she teased. 6 months together deserves proper celebration. As Ashwell drove toward Castries, he reflected on their journey, the collision that had brought them together, the barriers overcome, and the partnership they'd forged across differences that once seemed insurmountable. His phone rang through the car speakers, displaying his executive assistant's name. Caroline, good morning. Good morning, Ash. Just confirming everything's prepared for tonight? He smiled at her conspiratorial tone. All arranged as discussed. Sophia suspects nothing beyond a simple anniversary dinner. The jeweler delivered the package to your office yesterday. It's in your desk drawer, as requested. Perfect. Thank you, Caroline. The velvet box contained not just the engagement ring he'd commissioned, a sapphire the color of Caribbean waters surrounded by smaller diamonds, but also documentation for his most significant surprise, the business partnership agreement naming Sophia as co-director of their foundation and equal stakeholder in their newly formed consulting enterprise. The dinner reservation at La Belle Creole, St. Lucia's most exclusive restaurant perched on cliffs overlooking the ocean, had been months in planning. Though Ashwell and Sophia generally preferred simpler local establishments, tonight's occasion warranted something exceptional. What neither anticipated was the sharp contraction that interrupted Sophia's preparation that afternoon. Just Braxton Hicks, she assured Thomas when he found her gripping the kitchen counter, breathing carefully through the discomfort. I've been having them for weeks. When a second contraction followed 15 minutes later, however, her certainty wavered. By the third, precisely 12 minutes after the second, even Sophia's practical nature acknowledged the obvious. Perhaps we should call Dr. Reynolds, she conceded as Thomas helped her to a chair. And Ash, though it's probably just false labor. 20 minutes later, Ashwell arrived home to find Thomas calmly loading a prepared hospital bag into the car while Sophia, remarkably composed despite increasingly frequent contractions, reviewed a checklist she'd prepared weeks earlier. So much for our reservation, she commented wryly when Ashwell rushed to her side, concern evident in his expression. We'll reschedule, he replied, helping her toward the waiting car, though I admit this wasn't how I envisioned our anniversary evening. At St. Lucia General Hospital, their calm preparation gave way to medical urgency when monitoring revealed one twin in distress. Within 30 minutes of arrival, Sophia was being prepared for an emergency cesarean section. Both of you are going to be fine, Ashwell assured her, holding her hand as medical staff moved efficiently around them. You've been preparing for this moment since we learned about these two troublemakers. Despite her obvious concern, Sophia managed a smile. Not exactly according to my carefully structured timeline, but when have our lives together ever followed expected paths? In the operating room, Ashwell remained beside her, a steadying presence as surgeons worked with practiced efficiency. The sound of a first cry, indignant and surprisingly strong, broke the tension at 6:42 p.m. It's a boy, the doctor announced, lifting a scrunched, dark-haired infant, briefly for them to see before passing him to waiting nurses. Exactly 2 minutes later, a second cry joined the first, slightly higher pitched but equally determined. And another boy, the surgeon confirmed. Congratulations, you have two healthy sons. Later, in a private recovery room, Sophia held their firstborn while Ashwell cradled his slightly smaller brother. Both infants had quieted after initial examinations, confirmed their good health despite arriving 3 weeks early. They have your determination, Ashwell observed, watching his son grip his finger with surprising strength. Making their own entrance timeline, regardless of our plans. Sophia studied the peaceful face of the baby in her arms. James Thomas, she decided, confirming the names they'd selected months earlier. And Thomas James, she added, nodding toward the infant Ashwell held. Perfect, he agreed, overcome with emotions he hadn't anticipated. Fierce protectiveness intertwined with overwhelming gratitude for the family they'd created together. When the twins finally slept, placed side by side in a hospital bassinet, Ashwell reached for the jacket he'd discarded hours earlier during the medical urgency. From its pocket, he retrieved the velvet box intended for their anniversary dinner. This wasn't how I planned to do this, he admitted, sitting carefully beside Sophia on the bed. I had arranged sunset champagne, private dining overlooking the ocean, the full romantic scenario. And instead you got medical gowns and hospital lighting, she teased gently, though her eyes widened when he opened the box. The sapphire ring caught the fluorescent light, but it was the documents beneath it that held her attention longest. A partnership agreement, she questioned, scanning the legal language with growing understanding. In every sense, Ashwell confirmed. Business, foundation, family. He removed the ring, holding it between them. I'm not asking you to be my wife in any traditional sense of subordination or dependence. I'm asking you to continue building this extraordinary partnership we've created, equal in all aspects, strengthened by our differences rather than diminished by them. Tears gathered in Sophia's eyes as she extended her hand, allowing him to slide the ring onto her finger. In case the past 6 months haven't made it abundantly clear, she said with characteristic directness, my answer is unequivocally yes. 3 months later, on a perfect Caribbean afternoon, a small gathering assembled on the beach cove where they had reconnected after her departure. Sophia wore a simple white dress that flowed in the sea breeze, adorned only with a crown of local flowers. Ashwell, equally understated in light linen, waited beneath an arch of tropical blooms as Thomas approached with Sophia on his arm. James and Thomas, now alert 3-month-olds, were held by Caroline and Dr. Reynolds respectively, honorary family members who had shared their journey. Their ceremony integrated St. Lucian traditions with contemporary elements that honored both cultures. Local fishermen transported them separately to the ceremony site in traditional gommier canoes, carved from single tree trunks using techniques passed through generations. Island elders performed the benediction, a blessing ceremony invoking ancestral wisdom, while friends from both their worlds formed the circle of community that St. Lucian custom places around new unions. Instead of exchanging rings alone, they participated in the sharing of waters ritual, each pouring water from significant locations: the hotel fountain where they met, the hillside spring that sustained Sophia's family, into a single vessel symbolizing merged journeys while maintaining individual sources. Their vows, spoken in both English and Creole, emphasized partnership rather than possession. "I don't promise perfection," Ashwell stated, "but rather persistent growth. Learning your language, both spoken and unspoken, and honoring your independence as essential to your spirit." Sophia's response acknowledged their journey. "I choose you not because you completed what was lacking, but because you recognized what was already whole." Our strength comes not from becoming the same, but from creating something new through our different perspectives. As island musicians played traditional melodies and guests celebrated with local cuisine, the sunset painted the horizon in breathtaking colors that seemed to mirror their journey. Initial brightness giving way to deeper, richer hues as day transitioned to evening. Near midnight, as celebrations continued around them, Ashwell and Sophia slipped away to walk along the moonlit shore, fingers intertwined and steps synchronized through practiced familiarity. "Happy?" he asked simply, watching her profile in the silvery light. "Beyond anything I could have articulated 6 months ago," she admitted, "though I maintain that spilling food on you was entirely your fault for being in the wrong place." "The absolute right place," he corrected, drawing her into his arms as waves gently caressed the shore beside them. "Though I admit I never expected a ruined suit to lead to the most meaningful chapter of my life." Their kiss, tender yet passionate, contained the promise of continued discovery, two distinct individuals choosing daily to build connection while honoring the differences that had initially seemed insurmountable. As they returned to their celebration, where friends awaited and their sons slept peacefully under Caroline's watchful eye, Sophia and Ashwell walked not as heiress and billionaire, not as waitress and hotel owner, but as equal partners who had discovered that love's true power lay not in erasing differences, but in bridging them with understanding, respect, and unwavering commitment to the family they had created together. As stars brightened over St. Lucia, their hillside home glowed with warm light, now a center for both family and community innovation. What had begun as an accidental meeting had evolved through deliberate choices, mutual respect, and the courage to bridge differences without requiring either to abandon their essential selves. Their partnership, like the foundation they'd established, was built not on romantic notions of destiny, but on the daily decision to value connection over convenience, understanding over assumptions, and the challenging but rewarding path of building something truly lasting together.